There is no enemy more patient than weakness. It waits not in the battle, not in the blow, but in the moment before the hesitation, the slight delay between thought and action, that flicker of doubt before the blade is drawn. That is where samurai die. To walk the path of Bushido is not to search for peace, it is to seek what tempers you. Fire does not purify what it will not touch, and the undisciplined spirit cannot withstand its own storms. Miyamoto Musashi understood this. Born in the year 1584, during Japan's age of endless war, he did not wait for strength to find him. He built it in solitude, in silence, with sword and ink, day after day, stroke after stroke, until the man and the blade became one. In his final teaching, the Dokudo, written weeks before his death in 1645, he carved these words, "Think lightly of yourself and deeply of the world." Why? Because the self is noise. It cries out for comfort, praise, escape. But the world does not care. The river does not pause for your excuses. The mountain does not lean to comfort your fear. You must rise to meet it or be buried by it. This is not a tale of glory. This is a reckoning. The story of a young samurai who possessed every advantage yet discovered his discipline was built on sand. And the Ronin master, who taught him the 10 sacred practices that separate wanderers from warriors, 10 disciplines, forged not in theory, but in blood. These are not habits, these are weapons. They cut through confusion, they burn off softness, they leave only what is solid, unyielding, sharp, and immovable. Chapter 1. The Samurai Who Looked Perfect. Osaka Province. Spring of 1612. Takeshi of the Hayashi clan, 22 summers old, stepped into the dueling circle before 300 witnesses. Everything in his life had prepared him for this moment. Born to a noble samurai family, trained since age 7, 15 years of daily practice, master of 3 sword schools, perfect form, flawless technique, his sensei's greatest student, his opponent, a wandering ronin. No family, no school, no reputation, dirty gi, chipped wooden bokken, nothing impressive about him. The duel should have lasted seconds. Instead, it lasted 3 breaths. The signal was given. Takeshi raised his sword, perfect stance, exactly as trained. His opponent did nothing, just stood there, blade lowered, eyes half closed. Takeshi waited for the attack. None came. He waited for movement. Nothing. His mind started racing. Why isn't he moving? Is it a trap? Should I attack? But Sensei said, "Never strike first unless..." The Ronin's blade flashed. A single strike. Not to kill, to disarm. Takeshi's sword flew from his hands before he even registered movement. 3 breaths. 1 strike. Defeat. The crowd fell silent. Then the whispers began. The Hayashi heir, defeated by a nameless Ronin. Takeshi stood frozen, not from the loss itself, from the realization that in the moment that mattered, his 15 years of training had vanished. His mind had seized. His perfect form had meant nothing. He had hesitated. And hesitation is death. That night, unable to face his family's shame, Takeshi left Osaka. No destination, just walking. Away from the whispers, away from the disappointment in his father's eyes, away from everything he thought he was. 3 days later, deep in the mountains, he found a small shrine, and sitting there, as if waiting, was the Ronin who had defeated him. "You," Takeshi said, hand moving to his sword. "Sit." The Ronin's voice was calm. "If you still think fighting me is the answer, you learned nothing from our duel. You humiliated me." "No. You humiliated yourself. I simply revealed what was already true." Takeshi's anger flared, but beneath it, something else. Curiosity. "What do you mean?" "Your technique is flawless. Your form is perfect. You have trained every day for 15 years, yet in 3 breaths, you were defeated. Why?" "Because you're faster." "No, because you hesitated. Your training is performance. Beautiful to watch. Useless under pressure." The words cut deeper than any blade. "Who are you?" "I am Kensei, a Ronin, a wanderer. But I once trained with Miyamoto Musashi himself. And if you are willing to unlearn what you think you know, I will teach you what he taught me. Teach me what? The 10 disciplines, not the forms you practice in your dojo, the truth that lives beneath, the difference between looking like a warrior and being one. Takeshi knelt. I am willing. Good. We begin at dawn. And it begins with the hardest discipline of all. Chapter 2. The first discipline. Rise without negotiation. Mountain Shrine. Before dawn. Takeshi woke to Kensei's voice cutting through darkness. Stand. Takeshi's body was exhausted. They'd climbed for hours yesterday. Every muscle ached. I need. Stand. Something in the command left no room for negotiation. Takeshi stood. Each morning of your training at the dojo, how did you wake? My attendant would call me at the hour of the tiger, and you would debate whether to rise. Check if your body was ready. Consider whether you truly needed to train that day. Yes? Takeshi felt his face flush. It was true. Even with attendance and duty and honor, he negotiated with himself every morning. This is the first discipline, Kensei said. Rise without negotiation. A blade does not warm up before it cuts. The sun does not vote before it rises. Why do you treat your warrior path like an option? Each dawn is a confrontation between who you were yesterday and who you are willing to become now. Train the act of beginning. Make it sacred. Make it immediate. Do not think. Do not check the body. Do not consult the mood. Move. Because a man who cannot win that first moment will not win the hour, and a man who loses the hour will lose the day, Kensei demonstrated. He moved from sitting to standing in one fluid motion. No hesitation, no internal debate, just movement. Try. Takeshi sat, prepared to rise. Started thinking about form, about, you're already negotiating, stand, now. No thought. It took 30 attempts before Takeshi could stand without the internal debate. Tomorrow morning, before dawn, you will wake yourself. No attendant. No drum. You will simply wake when the warrior within commands it. And you will stand, without negotiation, without thought. This is where discipline begins. Not in the grand duel. In the first movement of the day. Master this, and everything else becomes possible. Chapter 3. The second discipline. Move without emotion. Day 7. Mountain Training Grounds. For 6 days, Takeshi practiced waking without negotiation. It was harder than any sword form. On the 7th day, Kensei handed him a bokken. Hold your stance. Defend against my words. Your words? Yes. Ready? Takeshi assumed his perfect stance. Your family is ashamed of you. Your father regrets ever calling you son. Your sensei tells everyone you were his greatest failure. The dojo laughs at your name. You are a disgrace to the Hayashi clan. Rage erupted in Takeshi's chest. His jaw clenched. His grip on the bokken tightened until his knuckles were white. His stance shifted forward, aggressive, preparing to strike. Kensei lowered his own weapon. See? Emotion controls you. You insulted my family. I spoke words. You gave them power by reacting. In a real duel, an opponent will insult you to make you angry. Angry men fight recklessly. Reckless fighters die. Kensei circled him. This is the second discipline. Move without emotion. You do not need to feel like moving to move. You do not need to feel ready to act. The blade cuts not because it wants to, but because it must. Musashi faced men who wanted to kill him not once but dozens of times. He watched their anger sharpen their swings and dull their clarity. He did not swing hardest. He swung with precision. Why? Because he was not there to win emotionally. He was there to win completely. Kensei explained, emotions are like clouds. They swirl, shift, expand, and vanish. They do not carry truth. They carry motion. And motion is not direction. A storm may rise in your chest, but if your hand obeys it, you are no longer a warrior. You are a servant to your own chaos. Over the next 3 days, Kensei tested Takeshi repeatedly. Insults, provocations, unexpected strikes. Each time, Takeshi's emotions flared. Each time, he learned to observe them without obeying them. Feel the rage, acknowledge it, but do not act from it. Act through it. The man who lashes out is already defeated. The man who hesitates because he fears his own anger is already dead. But the man who can feel everything yet move independent of feeling, he becomes unstoppable. By the 10th day, Takeshi could stand in perfect calm while Kensei screamed insults. The emotions still arose, but they no longer commanded his sword. Good, Kensei said. Now you are ready for the discipline that separates those who achieve greatness from those who merely dream of it. Chapter 4. The Third Discipline. Train when you don't want to. Month 2. The morning of rain. The monsoon had arrived. Rain fell in sheets. Wind howled through the mountains. The temperature had dropped until every breath misted. Takeshi woke before dawn as trained, but his body screamed resistance. Every muscle ached from yesterday's brutal training. The cold bit through his thin clothing. The rain made every surface slick. A voice in his mind whispered, "One day of rest won't hurt. You've trained every day for weeks. Your body needs recovery." Even Kensei would understand. He almost stayed in the shrine. Almost. Then he remembered Kensei's teaching. The training you do when you want to means nothing. The training you do when you don't want to, that is what builds the warrior. Takeshi stood, dressed, walked out into the freezing rain. Kensei was already there, soaked, training, moving through sword forms as if the rain didn't exist. He saw Takeshi and nodded, said nothing, just continued training. They trained for 3 hours in the downpour. No shelter, no complaints, just movement. When they finally stopped, Kensei spoke, "This is the third discipline. Train when you don't want to. Anyone can train when inspired. Anyone can act when it's convenient. But the path hardens only under pressure, and pressure never asks if you're ready." Musashi did not become invincible through comfort. He slept in caves. He practiced his cuts in the rain. He sparred with wooden swords until his hands split open. No teacher, no audience, no permission, only discipline, pure, relentless, silent. Because there is no final exam for strength, only today's task, done or not done, and when it is done, tomorrow asks again. Kensei gestured to the rain-soaked training ground. You came today when every part of you wanted to stay warm and dry. That mattered more than any technique I could teach you. You do not rise for applause. You do not sweat for inspiration. You rise because the training is the path, not the goal. The path itself. Skip the training and you skip the way. It is not an accessory to growth. It is the furnace. Over the following weeks, Takeshi learned that discipline in comfort is not discipline at all. It's just routine. True discipline emerges only when every fiber of your being wants to quit and you continue anyway. Chapter 5. Disciplines. 4 through 6. Sharpening the blade. The fourth discipline. Eliminate the unnecessary. Month 3. Kensei visited the small hut where Takeshi slept. Looked at the possessions Takeshi had brought from Osaka. Family crests, fine clothing, multiple swords, books, mementos, things that marked his status. The warrior's mind is not overwhelmed because it is weak. It is overwhelmed because it is cluttered. You carry too much. He explained the fourth discipline. Eliminate the unnecessary. Musashi wandered with almost nothing. One sword, simple clothing, rice, nothing more. He wrote, "Do not have preferences in anything." Not because he hated comfort, but because preference becomes attachment, and attachment becomes weakness. When your mind is filled with possessions, status, and identity, you cannot perceive what truly matters, and the warrior must see clearly, always. Kensei made Takeshi reduce everything he owned to what could fit in a small cloth bundle. One sword, one change of clothing, a cup, nothing else. Every object you keep, ask it, does this make me sharper? Does this anchor me? Does this support the path? If not, it is weight. and wait. Slows the blade. The result was immediate. With less to protect, less to maintain, less to think about, Takeshi's mind became clearer, his movements faster, his focus sharper. The fifth discipline. Sit with the pain. Week 13. During sparring, Takeshi took a hard strike to his ribs. Not fatal, but painful. Deep, aching pain that made breathing difficult. His instinct. Stop. Rest. Seek comfort. Kensei. Sit. Do not move. Do not treat the pain. Just sit with it. This is the fifth discipline. Sit with the pain. Do not flee. Pain is not your enemy. It is your invitation to grow, to see, to separate what is fleeting from what is real. Musashi was no stranger to pain. He did not run from it. He did not drown it. He carved it into ink. He turned it into form. He fought not only men but the aches of hunger, the burn of isolation, the silence of loss. The man who cannot sit with his pain will betray himself to avoid it. He will fold. He will numb. He will run in circles and call it a journey. But the one who sits still becomes stone, not hardened in denial, but solid in understanding, because he has faced the fire and lived. Takeshi sat with his injured ribs for 2 hours. The pain screamed. His mind begged to move, to distract, to escape. But he remained. And in that remaining, something shifted. The pain was still there, but it no longer controlled him. It was just sensation, information, not master. The sixth discipline. Guard your focus like a fortress. Month 4. During meditation practice, Takeshi's mind wandered constantly. To his family, to the shame of defeat, to wondering what others thought. Kensei struck the ground with his staff. Your attention is the front gate of your mind. Leave it unguarded, and you will be conquered before you even raise your sword. This is the sixth discipline. Guard your focus like a fortress. The undisciplined mind is scattered, pulled apart by every sound, every memory, every fear. But the warrior does not give away his vision. Musashi wrote, "Perceive that which cannot be seen with the eye." You cannot do this while distracted. You cannot do this while your mind wanders to past defeats or future fears. The sword must be held with 2 hands, so must your attention. No split grip, no partial presence. If you chase 10 birds, you catch none. If you split your mind, you split your power. And if you dilute your presence, you invite defeat before the battle begins. Kensei taught Takeshi to practice single-pointed focus. 1 breath, 1 movement, 1 moment. Nothing else existed. When eating, only eating. When walking, only walking. When striking, only the strike. Each time you protect your attention, you thicken your fortress walls. And behind those walls, your power returns. Not because you are doing more, because you are leaking less. Chapter 6. Disciplines 7 through 9. The Inner Fortress. The 7th discipline. Live without needing approval. Month 5. A group of traveling samurai passed through the mountains. They saw Takeshi training with Kensei. "Is that the Hayashi heir, the one who was defeated by a nobody?" They laughed. Old Takeshi would have been crushed, would have needed to prove himself, would have challenged them to restore his honor. New Takeshi continued training, unbothered. After they left, Kensei spoke. "This is the 7th discipline. Live without needing approval. The need to be seen is the enemy of inner strength. As long as you depend on others' respect, you are owned by those who offer it. You train in the shadows so that, when the light finds you, you no longer need it." Musashi walked alone, not for show, not out of bitterness, but because he refused to bend his path just to walk beside those who didn't understand it. Ask yourself, would you still train if no one ever knew? Would you still walk this path if you received no honor for it? Would you still choose what is right, even if everyone thought you wrong? If the answer is no, then you are still performing. You are still chained. Takeshi understood. For months, he'd trained with only Kensei watching. No acclaim, no recognition, no family pride, just the work itself. And in that obscurity, he'd found something deeper than honor, purpose, independent of approval. The eighth discipline: control all things. Discipline is not something you switch on during training and leave behind at meals, Kensei explained one evening. This is the eighth discipline: control eating, speaking, and resting. The man who only sharpens his sword but lets his tongue run wild is not disciplined. He is decorated. Before every meal, ask, does this serve the path, or does it serve escape? Before every word, ask, does this sharpen clarity, or does it waste the warrior's breath? Even in rest, remain sovereign. Do not collapse into sleep like one fleeing battle. Enter it with the same calm presence as you enter combat. Takeshi learned to eat simply, speak rarely, sleep with structure. You can tell who a man truly is by how he eats when hungry, speaks when angered, and rests when exhausted, not just how he moves under others' eyes. Discipline is not partial. It touches everything. The ninth discipline: accept death daily. Month 6. Kensei's hardest teaching. He took Takeshi to a cliff edge. Below, 100-foot drop to rocks. Stand at the edge. Takeshi stepped forward, looked down, felt his heart race. This is the ninth discipline: accept death daily. The man who fears death fears life, because every hesitation, every excuse, every cowardly moment is a refusal to accept that time is not guaranteed. Musashi wrote, think of death in the morning and evening, not to create fear, to destroy it. When death becomes familiar, you no longer bargain with time. You act, not later, now. You were not promised tomorrow. You were not promised victory. You were not promised honor. You were promised one thing: you will die. The question is, will you meet that moment with regret in your throat or steel in your spine? Kensei's voice took on a timeless quality, as if speaking beyond just this moment. Throughout history, warriors have stood at this same precipice, facing mortality, understanding impermanence, learning that acceptance of death grants freedom in life. At Presence and Purpose, we preserve this teaching, not to make you morbid, to make you fearless. Because when you accept death, lesser fears dissolve. If you walk this path with us, you join centuries of warriors who understood. The man who accepts death has nothing left to fear, and therefore nothing left to lose. The words settled like snow on stone. From that day, Takeshi woke each morning acknowledging, this might be my last dawn, let it be the right one. And in that acceptance, procrastination vanished. Hesitation disappeared. Every action became immediate and complete. Chapter 7. The 10th discipline: hold the line no matter what. Month 7. The ultimate test. Everything Kensei had taught converged in a single moment. A group of bandits, 7 men, attacked the mountain shrine, looking for food, valuables, testing the lone ronin and his student. Takeshi and Kensei stood between the bandits and the shrine. 7 against 2, overwhelming odds. Every fiber of Takeshi's being screamed to run, to negotiate, to find another way. But Kensei's voice cut through. This is why we trained. Hold the line. This is the 10th discipline. Hold the line, no matter what. Not when it's easy, not when you're certain of victory. Hold it when everything screams to flee, when odds are against you, when no one would blame you for running. Because what you do when it costs the most reveals what you truly are. Musashi held the line. When he was outnumbered. When he fought with wood against steel. When death circled him not once but always. He did not break. He did not run. He moved forward. Or he stood still, but never backward. The bandits attacked. And something profound happened. Takeshi's training took over. Every discipline, at once. Rose without negotiation, moved instantly, no hesitation. Without emotion, fear arose, but didn't control him. Trained body, responded automatically from countless repetitions. No excess, no wasted movement, pure efficiency. Sat with pain, took a cut but didn't flinch. Complete focus. Saw only what mattered. Nothing else. No approval needed. Fought for the path itself. Total control. Ate pain like rice. Spoke with blade, not words. Death accepted. Moved with freedom. Nothing to lose. Held the line. Did not retreat. A single step. When the dust settled, 3 bandits were unconscious. 4 had fled. Takeshi and Kensei stood exactly where they'd started. The line had held. Kensei looked at Takeshi with something that might have been pride. Now you understand. The 10 disciplines are not separate. They are one blade forged from 10 folds of steel. Used together, you become something that cannot be broken by circumstance. Chapter 8. 1 year later. The student becomes teacher. Spring. 1613. 1 full year since Takeshi's defeat in Osaka. He stood at the same mountain shrine where his training began. But he was not the same man. A young samurai, perhaps 19 summers, appeared on the path. Lost. Broken. Defeated. Takeshi recognized the look immediately. The shame of failure. The weight of not being enough, despite all advantages. You, the young samurai said. Are you the one they call Kensei's student? I was. Now I'm simply Takeshi. I heard you were defeated in a duel. Yet you're still here. Still training. How? Because I learned that defeat is not failure. Quitting is. Did you come here to quit, or to learn? The young samurai knelt. Teach me. Takeshi looked to where Kensei sat in the shade, watching. The old ronin nodded. What is your name? Hiroaki. Hiroaki. We begin at dawn. And it begins with the hardest discipline of all. Which is rising without negotiation. The first battle every warrior must win happens before he even picks up his sword. As Takeshi spoke, he realized these weren't his words anymore, or Kensei's, or even Musashi's. They were truth, timeless, forged through centuries of warriors discovering the same pattern. The student becomes the teacher. The blade becomes the hand that wields it. The discipline becomes the warrior. Chapter 9. The Final Wisdom. That evening, Kensei called Takeshi aside. Tomorrow, I leave. What? Why? Because my work here is complete. You came as a performer. You leave as a warrior. The path continues, but you must walk it yourself now. But there's still so much I don't know. There will always be more to know. That's not the point. The point is, do you need me anymore? Takeshi realized he didn't. The 10 disciplines lived in him now, not as knowledge, as bone, as breath, as reflex. The 10 disciplines are not secrets, Kensei explained. They are written in Musashi's texts, available to anyone. But access is not mastery, application is. You applied them, daily, especially when unwanted. That forged you into someone who cannot be broken by circumstance, because you've trained to remain regardless of circumstance. Kensei placed a hand on Takeshi's shoulder. Throughout history, this teaching has passed from master to student, from Musashi to me, from me to you, and now from you to whoever comes next. His voice deepened, transcending the moment. At Presence and Purpose, we preserve this lineage, not as museum history, as living practice. The 10 disciplines Musashi lived, the path that transforms performers into warriors. For those who hear this call, who recognize their discipline is beautiful, but hollow, walk this path with us. Every week, the ancient practices that separate those who break from those who remain. Join us, not to learn theory, to forge yourself in the same fire that forged the greatest warriors in history. Subscribe to This Way, walk with us, because the path needs warriors, and warriors need the path. Takeshi bowed deeply. Where will you go? To find the next one who needs teaching, the one who has everything except what matters. Kensei smiled. Like you, a year ago. He walked into the mountains and disappeared. Takeshi stood alone, but not truly alone, because the disciplines lived in him, the path stretched before him, and somewhere, a young samurai who didn't know it yet was walking toward this same shrine. The cycle would continue, as it always had, as it always would. Ending the path that never ends. 10 years later, 1623, Takeshi, now 32, had become known throughout the provinces, not for boasting, not for seeking fame, simply for being undefeatable. He'd fought 17 duels in 10 years. Won all 17. Not through superior technique, through unbreakable discipline. But the victories meant little. What mattered was the path itself, the daily practice. The disciplines lived each moment. He'd become what Kensei promised, a warrior whose foundation could not be shaken, because it wasn't built on outcomes. It was built on unbreakable daily practice. Young samurai came to learn from him. He taught them the same 10 disciplines. 1. Rise without negotiation. 2. Move without emotion. 3. Train when you don't want to. 4. Eliminate the unnecessary. 5. Sit with the pain. 6. Guard your focus like a fortress. 7. Live without needing approval. 8. Control all things. 9. Accept death daily. 10. Hold the line no matter what. These were not just Takeshi's teachings, they were Kensei's, Musashi's, every master who ever walked the warrior path. The 10 blades that forged the unbreakable warrior. One evening, alone in meditation, Takeshi reflected on his journey. From the humiliated samurai who froze in 3 breaths to the man who could face 7 opponents without flinching. The difference wasn't talent, wasn't technique, wasn't even courage. It was discipline, daily, unwanted, unbreakable. After the fire, after the hunger, the silence, the shame, the cuts that didn't heal, and the mornings where rising felt like death, one thing mattered. Did you remain? Not perfect, not untouched, not unbroken. Just standing. When everyone said fall, did you stay upright? When everything screamed quit, did you continue? When the world offered comfort, did you choose the blade? That is the mark of the warrior. Not the sword, not the victories, not the titles or the tales, but this. He remained. Musashi remained through 61 duels, through hunger, exile, isolation, through a lifetime of walking alone. And when death came at 62 in the year 1645, he faced it the same way he faced life, with no gap between his word and his stance. The fire stayed lit until the very end. Let your fire stay lit. Not for others, for the path. Not to shine, to burn with purpose. When the days are dull, burn. When people leave, burn. When results don't show, burn. Because mastery isn't earned once. It is protected daily. You are the fire now, and the world cannot unmake it. Walk not for approval, not for arrival, but because the path is yours, and the fire walks with you forever. The result was immediate. With less to protect, less to maintain, less to think about, Takeshi's mind became clearer, his movements faster, his focus sharper. The 5th discipline. Sit with the pain. Week 13. During sparring, Takeshi took a hard strike to his ribs. Not fatal, but painful. Deep, aching pain that made breathing difficult. His instinct. Stop. Rest. Seek comfort. Kensei. Sit. Do not move. Do not treat the pain. Just sit with it. This is the 5th discipline. Sit with the pain. Do not flee. Pain is not your enemy. It is your invitation to grow, to see, to separate what is fleeting from what is real. Musashi was no stranger to pain. He did not run from it. He did not drown it. He carved it into ink. He turned it into form. He fought not only men, but the aches of hunger, the burn of isolation, the silence of loss. The man who cannot sit with his pain will betray himself to avoid it. He will fold. He will numb. He will run in circles and call it a journey. But the one who sits still becomes stone, not hardened in denial, but solid in understanding, because he has faced the fire and lived. Takeshi sat with his injured ribs for 2 hours. The pain screamed. His mind begged to move, to distract, to escape. But he remained. And in that remaining, something shifted. The pain was still there, but it no longer controlled him. It was just sensation, information, not master. The sixth discipline,